The Pueblo of Laguna is located in the heart of western New Mexico, among breathtaking vistas, majestic mesas, and geological formations sits a scenic village rich in history, traditions, and culture. The Lagunas were traditionally an agrarian people, planting crops and tending herds of sheep and cattle. The tranquil beauty of Laguna Pueblo conceals the brutal scars of domestic violence. The serenity we perceive hides the helplessness felt by abused children, the pain and humiliation of the abused, the frustration and wounds of a peaceful society.
Run, Orla! Run to Grandma! Run!
Come on out of there! Come on out of there!
Run!
Come on!
Hurry!
See, I didn't do nothing, actually.
I'm okay.
I didn't do nothing, right?
I don't need your.
Honey,
I'm all right.
honey, what's this?
Good morning. I'm Roland Johnson, and I'm governor of the Pueblo of Laguna. And I would like to take a few minutes to discuss with you some very serious concerns and issues that we have relative to domestic violence within our community. Domestic violence is not something that has been prevalent in our community until more recent years. I think by terms of our culture, we always believe that we as individuals should have total respect for each other's, that we have love and compassion for each other's. And it was this basic cultural philosophy or principle that allowed us to exist in the spirit of harmony.
The abuser will interrogate, keep all the money, and may insist that you ask permission to visit family, friends, or go shopping.
That he would plot and scheme to manipulate the children and I and to control us. We had very opposite beliefs. At times he would put me in the car and the children as well, and we would go for 2 hours until I had agreed with whatever it was that he was trying to impress us with. And sometimes just to get out of the car, I would agree. That's what I would have to do all the time in order to get there, even though I really didn't. I was never allowed to have my own opinion or my own beliefs. It always had to be his.
He would start hitting me, kicking me. After he was gone, after he died, seemed like all that weight just was gone. I mean, I guess I was always living in fear.
Children learn abusive behavior by the examples witnessed and taught within the family. The imprint on their lives may last a lifetime.
There was one time that I remember, and that time was when we were coming back from Albuquerque, and there was an argument between my mother and my father, and he hit her about several times. It was over just a disagreement, and he ended up pulling the car over, and he was hitting her then and really putting her down. There's a lot of put downs, being real negative. And once the car was stopped, he walked around, he pulled her out, and he dragged her around, and from what I could see was he just continuously kept hitting her and beating her. I had a lot of anger for him, and there was a fear of him hurting my mother all the time.
At the time, being raised, though, I had lack of support through my mother. There was, no support towards my education or my growth standards as I was growing my teenager years. And as far as that went, today I feel great because my mother is proud of what I'm doing as far as getting help for myself. What I saw was a lot of my uncles coming in, drinking, and under the influence. And as far as that go, you know, I had one uncle that I used to see come in directly and boss everybody around, take control over a family. And it was kind of rough to see because we were pushed around as young kids. And when it happened, you know, one time I seen my aunt, you know, get directly thrown down and kicked in the face. And that picture's, you know, stuck with me ever since.
But my daughter came running in, and she was tapping me on my thigh. And I looked down at her and I said, "What is it, sweetie?" And she looked up at me and she tiptoed. She was on her tiptoes and she went like this. She said, "Mommy, let's not make Daddy mad, okay?" And as soon as she said that, she turned around, she skipped back into the living room, and I could hear her. And she was, "Daddy, do you want some water? Daddy, do you want me to take your shoes off?" And, you know, that stabbed me in the heart. That was the thing that just, to me, it was like, you know, she's going to be just like me when she grows up.
As a child, you know, at the time I felt helpless about doing anything about it. I wish I could have, but I couldn't at the time.
I think that she had learned it from her mom initially, because her mother was abused. She was an orphan and was raised by some of her family and basically was treated as like a slave.
I saw it with the way that she treated my mom, or the way that my mom was always trying to, I guess, please her. When she was 12, if she wanted to go to school, she had to fend for herself, and that was one of her goals, was to finish school.
Since I have children with him, even though they are adults, I'm still very concerned because of his manipulative techniques and what he does to control them. And I'm hoping that they will understand what he's done to them. They lived through it for their whole life, and my whole life. They desire the love and approval of their father, and he uses this to manipulate them and get what he wants.
The honeymoon phase is filled with apologies. The promise that it will never happen again keeps many women and girls in abusive relationships.
My ex would always come back with an apology saying he was sorry, and I would listen and be angry, but I would always take him back because he would tell me he would lie to me and tell me that it would never happen again, and of course it always would.
I got off, but I went back one more time because he came after us, begging, asking, crying, and saying that, you know, of course it wouldn't happen again. But at that time, that was a real short-lived time that I was back. It was probably just 3 weeks or so, and then I left again.
Domestic violence often begins with jealous behavior. This may be interpreted as signs of love. Verbal abuse diminishes self-esteem, and jealousy can kill.
Actually, when I got married with a black eye, and I'd already been choked and manipulated and tricked, but I really wasn't aware of it.
And initially when I was dating, he was really nice. The flowers, he actually brought me flowers when I'd be working. Of course, all the ladies would just, you know, say, "Wow, what a nice, you know, guy. Wish our husbands did that for us." But there was the jealousy piece that really played at the beginning, even in our relationship.
Or he had taken baling wire and tied me up with baling wire at the top of a hill, and his relatives were down below. They were building a house, and that was very embarrassing for me.
And one time he became real angry, and I was physically abused even before we got married.
Women stay in abusive relationships because of fear, economics, and low self-esteem.
The threats were real. He was still a police officer. It was no use calling the police department because everybody was afraid of him too. There's so much of this power and control that is a big part of domestic violence that was so real to me during that time. But I still knew that it was going to change.
If we can instill in our young people those traditional values that we have about life, about family, about relatives, relationships, I think that young people then would think twice about getting involved in incidents that really result in violence against another person. You know, we have concerns about date rape as an example.
They think that they're in love and don't take the jealousy and acts of violence seriously. They may attribute his abusive behavior to just being in a bad mood. One teen stated, "I never saw it coming," she said. "I would have left my high school sweetheart before he beat me up, held me down, and raped me."
One is teenage violence, teen violence. Perhaps many of us are not aware of the type of violence that occurs between our young people, but we have come across information, or we're well aware of the fact that there is in fact violence in the areas of theft at schools, fights among our young people, and you know, in the area of unwanted pregnancy, that is becoming a very serious problem. And you know, again, I think the matter of how it is that we address this particular problem goes back to my statement that really it goes back to the very basic family. Because if we can instill in our young people those traditional values that we have about life, about family, about relatives, relationships, I think that young people then would think twice about getting involved in incidents that really result in violence against another person. You know, we have concerns about date rape as an example.
She just kept getting pressured by her boyfriend, and I think she became afraid of him and finally gave him what he wanted. Well, she didn't really give it to him on purpose. I mean, he just finally, you know, took advantage of her in a violent way, and she felt like she was worthless after that.
The people that I hung around with were people that put me down, and I tended to try and please them too. And I hated the way I felt, but I didn't know what to do about it.
In that it is not the way of a man to beat up on a woman.
The abuser does not take responsibility for his actions. He blames others for his problems and makes the victim feel as though they're responsible for his actions and feelings.
And one morning I woke up and I went to the bathroom, and it was after a night of being physically abused. And when I saw whoever it was that was looking back at me in the mirror, I started crying. I did not recognize myself. That was not me. And I couldn't believe how, you know, my face, everything was so swollen, my head. And he came up behind me, and he just hugged me from behind. And he told me, he said, you know, he said, if you didn't make me angry, if you didn't make me mad, your face wouldn't look like that.
Ends up being afraid of him because of the accusations he's made and the way he's already hit her and treated her, because she loves him, and his excuse is, yeah, well, you love me, why aren't you doing this? You're probably cheating on me and things like that. And verbal abuse, such as putting someone down often. Like every day I see that, people putting people down just to make themselves look better, feel better.
Through the consumption of alcohol and the taking of drugs, they tend to alter the state of mind so that it puts a person in a position where they may tend to do those things that they would not be inclined to do so if they were in a proper or healthy state of mind, and that is to commit violence against another person.
I figured that drinking was part of life. I eventually got married, and I modeled my marriage after older brothers, after older cousins, not my own brothers, but cousins, older friends. That's how I modeled my marriage. I just figured that was a part of life. But it got me in trouble. I spent money foolishly and got in trouble.
It was just a mixture of both combined. I think with a lot of anger that I had, I would kind of flash back, I guess, and think about things, but never really talk about things that happened with my father and mother. But when I would drink, it just like I had no care. But it was like almost being empty, but something was there. And I just really would end up fighting with whoever, and like with women, and you know, in my life it was hard, because I think to myself that I used to see him have this control, and not knowingly I would use it the same way that he did.
It takes courage to change. The rewards are great for a lifetime of harmony.
Well, at the time I received help through a dispatcher and a police officer as the time I was getting booked in. At the time I had realized, knowing I was intoxicated and what I'd done, and how much out of control I was. So realizing at the point, you know, I said my prayers, and when it came in through time to go to court, what happened was I took it upon myself to go ahead and ask the judge on my own, as far as realizing in a sober way and finally waking up and realizing I didn't want to be in this situation all the time. So I finally did take it in my own hands to get that help for myself.
I said, Your Honor, I said, I really need help. I said, I'm tired of the direction of my life. I said, I'm tired of coming to sit in your courtroom. I said, you're probably tired of seeing me too. I said, I hurt my family. I said, everybody around that's cared about me and talks to me well. And as well as myself, I've hurt myself the most. And I asked him if I could be considered to be put in a treatment program. And at that moment, he just kind of paused for a while. And he told me, he said, that's the most, the most I've ever heard anybody be this honest in the courtroom and tell me that they really want treatment other than me having to send them. And it was, in all honesty, that's how it came from my heart. It didn't come from up in my head, but it came from my heart, wanting to change.
I just feel good about, everything now, that we're all trying to be a family and not be against each other. We're trying to, work with each other. And, like I said, I'm proud of him, and, I'm proud of my kids. And myself, getting help too.
I feel that it's really gotten a lot closer.
Before there was seemed to be a distance, but you know, now it's like we're a lot closer, open. We can sit there and laugh. We can sit on the couch together and all of us watch a movie or eat dinner together and have a good time.
Again, I never want to bring my children up in the way I was brought up. And deep in my heart, I wasn't going to teach my daughter to accept these types of behavior from any man. And I had to prove to her that I was a strong person, but I needed their strength as well. And knowing this, and I drew from their strength, their young strength, kept me sober. I made my choice. I never want to get involved with alcoholism and use that as my excuse in any shape or form. And because of that thinking and looking at their young faces, that kept me going. Knowing that I went through this very deep depression, I got real sick, but because of the support system I also had, my family, my sisters, my ex-husband's family, they were very supportive. And they were my advocates to keep me on the right foot and helping me continue to believe on myself that no matter how hard life got for me, the trial, that I still can go forward and still make something positive of my life, take all the negativeness and teach and become a stronger advocate for women who are being abused, whether it be emotionally, physically, or sexually.
As school started, he had a little bit trouble in school. It's with his homework and stuff like that, so we've been getting his homework, finding him a tutor for his school and stuff, so now he's getting better grades. I can't be loud, cuss, be nice to my lady in front of them and stuff.
I know that I don't have to be angry anymore, that I can just set my boundaries and do and say as I feel that's the right thing for me and my values to do. And by doing this will be healing for me.
What do you like to do?
Today we're going to fill out the control logs on negotiation and fairness. So if you'll think back to a time when you have been unfair and negotiating, remember last week we talked about negotiation and whether things were negotiating or not, negotiable or not. Okay, this week we're going to write down on the paper in your control log what the situation was when you were not able to negotiate fairly.
Teaching traditions, history, and cultural values will instill pride in self and community. Cultural activities require discipline and devotion and dedication. Cultural heritage will develop strong character traits, resulting in responsible individuals and mature community members.
I'm here today to teach my son our culture and what he needs to learn as far as his background, where he comes from, who he is. And for this sun, it's just a sun face, another design to represent the sun face, the Sun Clan. And these dots represent the snow as the sun is shining over our pueblos. And this is what this represents, our pueblos. Basically here I put the design to show that there's the sun shining every day, and these are our kivas, or structures, different patterns of how to put them, and the rays right here. There's the rays. And for him, he's a dancer. He already danced as a young age. When he was 3 years old, I couldn't believe it myself, but he proved to me that he is into his culture, and he does a lot. He talks a lot with his grandmother in Acoma, and they do share a lot of custom with him.
Stop domestic violence. You can make a difference.
I remember my grandfather saying, "We were not made to hit."
You know, I do appreciate the opportunity that I've had to at least give you the benefit of my thoughts on a very serious problem that we have here at the Pueblo, and concerns that we have regarding domestic violence. I've mentioned our cultural ways many times, because I truly believe that if we can refresh our memories, and if we can again practice those cultural values that have always been a part of our community, now it's our opportunity, and we should take advantage of the effort as parents and as grandparents to try to instill in our young people those same cultural values. Because I think if we can conform to those values or to that way of life, then so many of the concerns and so many of the events or incidents that are now that now fall in the realm of violence against another would not be present, because our state of mind based on our cultural teachings would be such that we would make sure that we don't find ourselves in a situation where we basically are abusing each other's, or violating or at least committing acts of violence against each other's. Ame to hatin it school transituna mo at shani e transfron teacher. Kai hopa tuna ame yukzi kanashin trash wait the shifty sayo times. It case out to him stitu mayone, it's a cake at this teacher. Qua et is gay teach good touch motuna cat guas out to him as coati. Kai speech from Mutsi night root gay through such. The Kokzi guys ultimate you, she's out to meet the Toatati, goes new drat room, who can share near drat room, it showed to Mayon, a moon nomus, 10 nomus, partial nomus, die.